There I was, standing outside my garage, totally unaware that Karen from the HOA was sneaking around the side of my house with a crowbar. One moment, I'm sipping coffee. The next, my security cam shatters into pieces, and she thinks she's won. What she doesn't know? That camera was live streaming everything directly to the sheriff's office downtown. And that video? Already saved. Already flagged. Already backed up in 3 places. By the time she realized the mistake, flashing red and blue lights were pulling into the neighborhood, and this time, her HOA badge wasn't saving her. But how did we even get here? Why would someone go that far to silence a camera? Let me take you back. It started slow, like most power trips do. Karen wasn't just any neighbor, she was the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. With a clipboard in one hand and her phone camera always ready in the other, she roamed the neighborhood like it was her personal kingdom. I had barely lived there for 2 weeks when she showed up at my door with a warning. Not a welcome, not a hello, just a warning. Something about my trash cans being 3 inches off from HOA regulation. I laughed it off. Big mistake. From that moment, it was war. Every day I'd catch her loitering near the edge of my yard, pretending to walk her dog that didn't exist. I'd find anonymous violation notices stuffed under my door. Lawn too dry, mailbox too shiny, porch light too dim. The kind of things that only someone with too much time and a vendetta would notice. My neighbors whispered stories about her, all with the same tone of defeat. They said she once fined someone for a wind chime being too cheerful. I thought they were exaggerating. I was wrong. Things escalated when she reported me for having unapproved construction materials on my side yard. It was just a few extra fence boards stacked neatly behind a bush, waiting to be used to repair my fence. I tried to explain that to the HOA, but they sided with her. A fine showed up 2 days later. $150. That's when I realized I needed to protect myself. I installed a security system, nothing fancy at first, just a few motion-detecting cameras covering the driveway, front porch, and side yard. Not to spy on anyone, just to document the nonsense. But the moment the cameras went up, Karen lost it. I caught her pacing in front of my driveway, squinting at the little black boxes, trying to determine their angles. One afternoon, she actually climbed into her car, parked directly across from my home, and sat there for 2 hours watching. No phone out, just staring. At first, I ignored it. But then I caught her doing something wild. She was taking pictures of my house from her car and pointing at the cameras like they were weapons. That same week, I received a violation for surveillance equipment visible from the street. She claimed my cameras were an eyesore and made the neighborhood feel unsafe. The irony was laughable. I appealed the violation, of course, and won, but just barely, and that's when something shifted. Before the cameras, Karen had complete control. She'd twist reality, manufacture complaints, and the HOA would take her word as gospel. But now every accusation she threw at me could be disproven with video evidence. And not just disproven, publicly. I started showing footage at HOA meetings, calling out her false reports with timestamps and clear audio. I even caught her trespassing on another neighbor's yard to measure their grass height with a tape measure. People gasped. She turned red and stormed out. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. That's when I realized I hadn't just installed security cameras. I'd installed the one thing Karen hated most: accountability. Suddenly, other neighbors started talking to me. They wanted to know how I installed my system, what kind of cameras I used, if they were affordable. Karen's empire was crumbling, and she knew it. The woman who once ruled by fear was now being watched herself, and she was unraveling. The HOA board began receiving complaints about her, how she lurked outside houses, how she used her position to intimidate and retaliate. She responded the only way she knew how, by doubling down. She accused me of violating privacy regulations, of filming common areas, I wasn't, of targeting her specifically, I wasn't, yet. But the board started ignoring her emails. One of the members even quietly thanked me for the footage I shared of Karen ripping up a neighbor's garden flag because it wasn't HOA approved. The community's patience was wearing thin. Karen, on the other hand, was losing control of the HOA, of her narrative, and of me. The cameras stripped her of the power she used to wield unchecked. She didn't realize that the neighborhood was done living in her shadow, but instead of backing down, she did something no one expected. She decided to make an example out of me. And that's how it all spiraled into the moment she made the biggest mistake of her life, smashing my camera in broad daylight, unaware that I had upgraded the system to stream live to the county sheriff's department just the week before. It wasn't just vandalism anymore. It was evidence. And Karen? She was now the one caught on tape. Karen didn't take humiliation well. After the HOA meeting where I exposed her lies with time-stamped footage, I could practically feel the heat of her glare from across the street. But I didn't expect what came next. Most people, when publicly called out, at least retreat to lick their wounds. Not Karen. She doubled down with a fury I hadn't seen before. Every morning, like clockwork, she'd be pacing on the sidewalk in front of my house, back and forth, no dog, no purpose. Just those quick, angry strides, arms crossed tightly over her clipboard, lips moving like she was muttering 100 fines under her breath. At first, I watched from inside. Then I stopped bothering. My cameras caught everything. They became my eyes when I didn't want to deal with her directly. Within days, I started receiving a new wave of HOA violations. Trash can visible from public view. Weeds encroaching onto community property line. Excessive glare from front window reflection. It was laughable, except the fines weren't. They totaled over $800 in less than a week. But the best part? Karen had submitted proof. Grainy, zoomed-in photos taken from weird angles, clearly manipulated or outdated. What she didn't know was that my security system time-stamped everything in real time. Not just video, motion logs, environmental readings, even sound. It took me minutes to refute every single one of her claims. I packaged the footage up, slapped timestamps next to each scene, and emailed them to the HOA board with a polite but firm message. These false violations are now harassment. This time, the board didn't defend her. One of the newer members even replied, thanking me for the clarity. They quietly revoked the fines. Karen must have known. She started pacing harder, sometimes even stopping to take new pictures of my home. She'd stare directly into my front-facing camera and mutter something, then snap a photo like she was documenting a crime scene. Then, it escalated. One afternoon, as I pulled into my driveway, Karen rushed toward me from the sidewalk. Her face was flushed, furious, like she'd been building up to this confrontation for days. She stood with her hands on her hips, blocking my path to the front door. "This is a family neighborhood," she hissed. "Those cameras are intimidation tactics." I calmly replied, "They're legal. They're on my property, and they've saved me from more than a few lies." She scoffed. "People don't feel safe with you recording everything." I raised an eyebrow. "People? Or just you?" She went silent for a second, then leaned in. "Take them down. Now before the HOA takes real action." I didn't budge. "You already tried, remember? And you lost." Her face twisted into something almost venomous. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." I smiled. "No, I think I do. And that's exactly why the cameras are staying." I walked past her and into my home, heart pounding but steady. I didn't look back, but I knew she was still standing there. I could feel her glare through the front door. That night, I upgraded everything. What Karen didn't know was that I had recently enrolled in a community safety pilot program sponsored by the Sheriff's Department. As part of the initiative, they allowed verified residents to voluntarily stream their front-facing security cams to a central monitoring system accessible only in emergencies. It wasn't mandatory, but after Karen's threats, I didn't hesitate. My camera system now streamed live footage to an encrypted server linked with the local sheriff's hub. The footage was only reviewed if an incident occurred, but the fact that it existed was a layer of protection no HOA fine could match. Karen, however, had no idea. She thought she was winning. She thought she was intimidating me into submission. She thought the HOA still danced to her tune. But with every manipulated violation, every confrontation, every threat, she was digging her own grave, on camera. The rest of the neighborhood began catching on, too. Neighbors who once stayed silent now whispered to me over their fences. "Thanks for what you did at the meeting. We've all been tired of her. She tried to fine me last year for grass inconsistency. I didn't even know that was a thing. You're the first person to stand up to her." And standing up to her? It felt like the neighborhood was finally waking up. Karen's grip was loosening, but she didn't see it that way. To her, I was the problem, the threat, the one person she couldn't control or scare into submission. And when people like Karen lose control, they don't walk away quietly. They explode. And that explosion? It was coming sooner than I realized. Because the very next day, Karen made the dumbest decision she could possibly make. One that would unravel everything she built. And lucky for me, every second of it was recorded in real time. The night it happened, I was upstairs with a book and a hot cup of tea. I wasn't expecting anything unusual, just the usual background noise of wind chimes and the faint hum of the neighbor's pool filter. But then I heard it. A soft crack, like something brittle giving way. I froze. I knew every natural sound of my property, and this wasn't one of them. I pulled up my phone and opened the live feed from my backyard camera. Nothing. The front yard? Clear. Side path? Empty. But the moment I switched to the fence cam, the one I had quietly installed after Karen's pacing turned obsessive, I saw it. Someone had pried open one of the boards near the far corner. The view was grainy in the dark, but there was movement, just enough to confirm someone had been there. I replayed the motion-activated snippet and saw it. A shadowy figure, crouching, fumbling with the boards, and then vanishing as quickly as they'd come. I couldn't make out a face, but the posture. It was familiar. And earlier that afternoon, the system had logged motion in that same spot. I scrolled back and there it was. Karen pretending to walk her dog along the perimeter of my property, pausing exactly at that section of the fence. Hands clasped behind her back, head tilted sideways, watching. I grabbed the full clip set and submitted it to the HOA immediately. Possible break-in attempt, property damage to fence, suspect seen casing the area earlier. But what did the HOA say? They dismissed it. They said it was inconclusive. They claimed the footage does not clearly indicate intent to cause harm or damage, and that fence repairs fall under the homeowner's maintenance responsibilities. No investigation, no warnings, no concern. That's when the truth finally hit me. Karen wasn't acting alone. She had influence, power, maybe even protection from certain people on the board who didn't want to rock the boat. Or worse, she was hiding something that they knew about, something they were afraid might come out. I didn't argue. I didn't even reply. I simply opened my back-end security panel and activated the secondary protocol I'd been holding off on. From that moment on, every camera on my property, front, back, and side, streamed directly to two locations, my secure cloud storage and the sheriff's server through the pilot neighborhood monitoring program. There would be no more grainy footage, no more questions of tampering or evidence lost in the shuffle. If anything else happened, it would be public record within minutes. That same night, I reinforced the broken section of the fence, not with wood, but with steel plates bolted to a concrete footer. If anyone tried again, they'd need more than a screwdriver and a grudge. And sure enough, the next morning, the steel was scratched. Deeply. Someone had come back. I stared at the damage and felt my jaw clench. It wasn't vandalism anymore. It was escalation. And whoever it was wasn't expecting I'd upgraded everything. I reviewed the stream logs and my gut twisted. At exactly 3:27 a.m., a figure emerged from the bushes and knelt at the same section of fence. The same posture, same height, same limp in the right foot Karen always tried to hide. But this time, the footage was sharp, crystal clear. I could see her face when she looked up toward the camera, her expression smug, almost daring. She didn't realize the new cameras had infrared lenses now. She thought the darkness would cover her tracks. She was wrong. I clipped the video, added a timestamp, and made a secure copy. Not just for myself, but for someone far more important. At this point, I stopped trying to convince the HOA. They didn't want the truth. But the sheriff's office? They'd been watching quietly, keeping logs of every complaint I'd filed and every suspicious act caught on stream. Now, with this new footage, I knew it was only a matter of time before they'd step in. I started noticing other strange things, too. A neighbor told me Karen had been in her backyard recently, without permission, said she was checking on fence alignment. Another neighbor found her peering over their shed with binoculars, claiming she was verifying property boundaries. It was all adding up. Karen wasn't just a petty control freak, she was desperate, maybe even hiding something criminal. And now that her scare tactics weren't working on me, she was unraveling. She had no idea that her little nighttime sabotage mission had been streamed live to the sheriff's office. And when they finally knocked on her door, she wouldn't have time to fake her way out of it. She'd finally learned that messing with the wrong neighbor doesn't end with a passive-aggressive letter. It ends with handcuffs. And that moment? It was closer than she ever expected. The day it finally happened was unusually quiet. The kind of quiet that made you feel like the world was holding its breath. The birds weren't chirping like usual, and even the wind seemed to have stilled, as if nature itself knew something was about to go down. I was inside, just wrapping up some paperwork, when my phone buzzed. Not a message, not an email. It was my security system app triggering an alert. Motion detected, garage side. I clicked it without hesitation. At first, all I saw was the side of the garage. The camera had caught a blur, someone moving fast just out of frame. But I knew that rhythm, that jerky movement, that impatient pacing. It was Karen. Seconds later, she came into full view. No disguise, no hesitation. Broad daylight, middle of the afternoon, and there she was in a tank top and jeans, standing on my property like she owned it. In her hands, a crowbar. My pulse spiked. She glanced around, once, then twice, and moved in. With one swift motion, she swung the crowbar up and slammed it into the side-mounted security camera. The screen went black instantly. She must have thought she won. But she didn't know what I had done 2 weeks earlier after the fence incident. I had mounted a second camera, smaller, nearly invisible, tucked under the garage eave, barely the size of a thumb drive. It was angled just right, pointing down and capturing the entire sidewall, including where the primary camera was installed. That tiny lens didn't just capture her smashing the first camera. It caught everything. Her face, her expression. The moment she looked straight at the camera she had just destroyed and grinned. She thought the damage was done. She had no clue she had just been filmed in 1080p high definition. Her every move live-streamed directly to both my cloud and, more importantly, the county sheriff's incident monitoring program. And right then, as I was still staring at the feed, my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. I answered. A firm voice spoke, calm but serious. "Mr. Anderson, this is Deputy Reyes from the sheriff's office. We just received a live transmission from your property. Are you aware someone's vandalizing your security system?" I couldn't help but let out a short breath, half relief, half adrenaline. "Yes," I said, steadying my voice. "It's HOA board member Karen Whitlow, and I've got backup footage." There was a pause. Then he said, "Don't delete anything. We're rolling on this now." and we need access to your cloud link for evidence preservation. Done. I sent the link within seconds. Less than 10 minutes later, I heard the familiar hum of an approaching cruiser, tires crunching down the gravel road near my fence line. Karen must have heard it too, because from the other cam feed, I saw her whip her head toward the sound and bolt. But it was too late. A deputy was already stepping out of the vehicle, hand resting casually on his hip, walking straight toward her. Karen tried to play dumb. I couldn't hear her words, but her arms flailed dramatically. She pointed at my house. She probably spun some half-baked story about how she thought the camera was illegal, or how I had violated HOA guidelines, anything to distract from the fact that she was caught red-handed with a weapon. Didn't matter. She was already on camera with the crowbar, already on record walking onto my property, already live-streamed smashing equipment that didn't belong to her. Another deputy showed up, then another, and soon they weren't talking to her anymore. They were cuffing her. That's when it hit her. The panic set in. Her protests grew louder, more erratic. She started shouting names, HOA officials, local council members, even hinted that her brother-in-law knew someone at the sheriff's department. None of it worked, because the camera doesn't lie. And this time, the camera wasn't just watching, it was testifying. As they walked her toward the cruiser, one of the deputies turned and looked straight at my cam, the hidden one. He gave a small nod, like he knew exactly what had just happened. I stood at my window, watching it unfold in real time. After weeks of escalating nonsense, the break-ins, the intimidation, the denial from the HOA, justice was finally catching up to Karen, and she had done it to herself. She thought no one was watching. She thought she could destroy the evidence, but she forgot. The second you set foot on my land with bad intentions, you're not just being filmed, you're being watched by the law. And it was only going to get worse for her from here. The chaos that unfolded after Karen was cuffed outside my garage didn't end with her ride to the station. It only escalated from there. Because the moment her face hit the sheriff's system and that live stream footage was officially cataloged, the spotlight on her blew wide open. And suddenly, this wasn't just about vandalism. This was about abuse of power. At the station, she must have thought she could smooth talk her way out of it. That same smug charm she used on the HOA board, the fake authority voice she loved to throw around in community meetings, the passive-aggressive way she claimed everything she did was within protocol. None of that held weight when they pulled up the footage. Deputy Reyes didn't even flinch when Karen said she was a board member, just checking up on a potentially unauthorized security installation. They didn't care, because the footage didn't show someone conducting an inspection. It showed her storming onto private property, trespassing with intent, and smashing private surveillance equipment with a metal crowbar. And the icing on the cake? The timestamp proved she had lied. The HOA had no meeting scheduled that day. No inspections were on the calendar. The HOA president even admitted they hadn't authorized Karen to visit any property that week. She was completely on her own, and that made her criminal actions personal, not professional. That's when the real investigation kicked off. Sheriff's deputies began combing through recent complaints in our neighborhood, and it didn't take long before patterns started to emerge. Reports of strange property tampering, disputes over fines that didn't add up, cameras mysteriously going out, even mail going missing. Complaints that were previously dismissed as neighborly misunderstandings were suddenly looking a lot more intentional. Neighbors who had once kept their heads down started speaking up. First was Mrs. Langdon, an elderly woman 3 houses down, who said Karen had fined her twice for leaving her garbage can at the curb 5 minutes too long. When she protested, Karen reportedly threatened to report her to the city. Turns out, that wasn't even legal. Then came Mark and Trina, a young couple who had mysteriously lost 3 of their Amazon packages in the span of 1 month, only to later see Karen walking out of their yard one afternoon, claiming she was inspecting for landscaping violations. With the sheriff's office now involved, people felt safe talking. They dug up Karen's trail like bloodhounds. Her printed citations, her unofficial fines, her handwritten notes slipped under doors, notes laced with veiled threats and HOA jargon that made them sound official, but were completely fabricated. A few neighbors even turned over old doorbell cam footage they had saved, unsure what to do with it, until now. What came to light painted Karen not as a strict rule enforcer, but as a power-hungry vigilante using the HOA as her personal battleground. And then there was the money. An audit of recent HOA expenditures revealed something that made even the sheriff's eyebrows rise. A $2,800 camera maintenance charge listed under Karen's oversight. She had claimed it was for community surveillance upgrades, but no one remembered any new cameras. And that charge had come just weeks before my camera was destroyed. The board, now fully in panic mode, tried to distance themselves from her. I got an email from the HOA president, Mr. Geller, stating they were shocked by recent events and that Karen had acted without board authorization. A special meeting was called. Her position was suspended, and she was officially removed from all HOA administrative access. But it was too late. The sheriff's office already had enough to pursue formal charges: vandalism, trespassing, criminal mischief, abuse of power, possible mail tampering, and maybe even fraud, depending on where that HOA money trail led. The moment Karen realized she wasn't just in trouble, but exposed, she snapped. At her hearing, she tried to spin the whole thing as a targeted vendetta against her, claimed the neighborhood had never respected her leadership, said she did what was necessary to protect the community from lawbreakers like Mr. Anderson. But all the judge had to do was press play on the footage. Her words didn't matter after that, because once again the camera didn't lie. Her own actions had built the case that would take her down, and the same smug expression she wore when she smashed my cam, that expression looked a lot different when she realized she'd been caught by the very system she tried to destroy. Her downfall wasn't just poetic, it was broadcast live. Karen's fall from grace wasn't just a satisfying conclusion to my personal nightmare, it became the spark that set off a full-blown neighborhood revolution. After the court hearing, where she was officially charged with property damage, criminal intimidation, and misuse of HOA authority, she didn't return to the neighborhood. Word was, she moved in with her sister across the county line while awaiting sentencing. The HOA board tried to maintain some level of dignity, sending out formal letters about rebuilding trust within the community, but nobody bought it. We had all seen how easily that trust had been abused. What followed was unlike anything our sleepy subdivision had seen before. Dozens of homeowners gathered for an emergency HOA meeting in the community clubhouse. Normally, those meetings were ghost towns, attended only by a few retirees and board members. But this time, the room was packed, standing room only. Folks I hadn't spoken to in years came up to shake my hand. People brought screenshots of fines they had received, printouts of Karen's notes, and even emails that were so laughably threatening it was a miracle no one had challenged her earlier. There was a unanimous vote, yes, unanimous, to dissolve the current HOA board entirely. Every single position was opened for re-election. And for the first time, candidates were nominated not based on who had lived in the neighborhood the longest or who threw the fanciest 4th of July parties, but based on integrity, transparency, and their stance on protecting homeowner rights. I was nominated. Twice. I politely declined. I told them I had no interest in running an HOA. I just wanted to live in peace, and maybe install a few more cameras. That got a laugh. But what did come out of that meeting was something more important than any title. The new board passed a series of amendments aimed at ending the unchecked power the HOA had abused for years. No fines could be issued without third-party review. All board communications had to be archived and made accessible to homeowners. And most importantly, no board member could act alone. Everything would now require a vote and paper trail. The neighborhood had spoken. But the impact didn't end with policy changes. Something deeper shifted. People started talking to each other more, checking in, sharing concerns, standing up for their neighbors. I'd see families helping each other with yard work or trash cans. Mrs. Langdon got a new ramp built by a group of volunteers. Trina started a community newsletter that actually made people want to stay informed. It was like a layer of fear had been peeled off the neighborhood. As for me, I quietly upgraded my entire security system. I installed new cameras, this time with cloud backups and solar-powered fail-safes. I even set up a discreet live stream connection to a private server, just in case anyone got the same idea Karen had. I didn't post about it. I didn't brag. But let's just say, if someone so much as sneezes near my driveway, I'll know before they even realize they're on camera. And yes, there's absolutely no blind spot. The Sheriff's Department also launched a broader review of HOAs in our county, opening a hotline for abuse complaints. Turns out, ours wasn't the only community where a rogue board member had gone unchecked. Karen's case became a cautionary tale, one that made headlines in our local paper and sparked policy debates in 2 city council meetings. In the end, the woman who thought she was untouchable became the very example of why oversight matters. She tried to use fear, intimidation, and destruction to control others, and got caught by the very thing she underestimated: the truth, caught in real time and streamed straight to justice. My wife likes to joke now. If Karen knew that tiny lens had that much power, she would have waved at it. And honestly, she's not wrong. We didn't just fix a broken camera, we fixed a broken system. And for the first time in years, our neighborhood feels like it belongs to the people again. If you think HOA Karen finally got what she deserved, just wait till you see what happens after the sheriff rolls up. This was more than just a broken camera. It was a breaking point. If you're fed up with HOA madness, don't just scroll. Hit subscribe to the HOA Stories, where we expose every outrageous twist, every petty power grab, and every satisfying revenge moment. New stories drop constantly, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.